Injury concerns for the Houston Texans. Yesterday, we went to practice. We didn't anticipate Brevin Jordan being on injured reserve. Where did the Texans go from here? It is S&L, Landry Locker, Cody Stoots with you. Daily Texans Report. We're at practice every day. We got you covered on the Texans digital beat. Let's just get right into the top story of the day yesterday. Brevin Jordan goes to injured reserve. I don't know a guy that is beloved in the locker room as Brevin Jordan. It seems like from CJ all the way to D'Amico, there was a portion of the coaches and the players, and not even a portion, really everybody rooting for Brevin Jordan's success. And it's hard not to root for him once you kind of talk to him. You kind of see kind of just how much he's improved. How big of a deal is Brevin Jordan going on injured reserve?
It's a medium-sized deal because he's a role player. It puts you in a little bit of a roster crunch for this week, but I bought into D'Amico Ryans and what he was selling. I bought into, I've never sent an African prince money because he told me he was going to share his fortune. I'm not that gullible, but I bought in that Brevin Jordan was going to have the best year of his career and was going to be a useful role player for this Texans team. And I was excited to see what he was going to bring to the table. And now a knee injury, I think, ends his season. There's no clarification on exactly how long he's going to be down.
Vibe. The way that CJ and D'Amico were talking, that was kind of the vibe.
That's what I was going to say is the way they talked about him was he's not playing again in 2024. And so as a role player that I was excited to see, like, this feels like a pretty decent loss. And right now, you don't have a very clear path to somebody that you trust as much as the Texans trusted Brevin Jordan to replace him. So you got two tight ends on the roster right now. You've got, like the fullback / tight end / running back that is British Brooks. Got a couple guys on the practice squad. So this is a team that uses their tight ends, moves them around, puts them in some different positions, and now to only have two when they clearly trusted Brevin Jordan and he knew what he needed to do in the offense and they liked what he brought to the table, and now that guy's just gone. It's a role-playing piece that you now take off of the table for Bobby Slowick and company on offense.
Yeah, it's just another element that you have. You said they use their tight ends. I mean, I don't know that they've used them that much through 2 weeks. I think there's other way, like as far as like getting him targets, but he does add an element that is not something that the average tight end has, with like the ability to get him out in space and all that. It'll be interesting to see how they handle this. I think that we probably see more Stover. We see more Schultz, Irv Smith. I don't know what Irv Smith has or doesn't have. If you're asking Irv Smith to be a third tight end, it's a lot different than a few years ago when you brought in OJ Howard to basically be your starting tight end. So I do want to see what Irv Smith can do, as well as British Brooks. I don't think it's like the hugest deal. I do think Brevin Jordan's back on the team now. I don't think there's any doubt about it. I think it's going to be probably a cheap contract, and I think he's back on the team next year. So I don't think he's going anywhere. But as far as overall impact, I don't think it's like the hugest injury, something that they're going to have to overcome. As a matter of fact, it was the big news yesterday, but I would say, like, of the three areas of injury concern we're going to talk about from an on-field standpoint and overcoming it, I'd say it's a distant third.
Yes, I'd agree with that standpoint. And it's not like it changes the outlook of the season for the Houston Texans because he's not available to them, but it was a nice option that CJ Stroud and the offense could have if they wanted to go with Brevin Jordan on a play, or he was available, or I think there was just, again, I believe there was potential to the 2024 season for him. Now, he wasn't going to have like 600 yards and 6 touchdowns, but if you have a Brevin Jordan game over the course of the season, like, that's a pretty nice moment for a role player in your tight end room. And now that's not available to you, and nobody that I feel like you can go out there and get. Like, you're not going to have an Irv Smith game. So you could have had a Brevin Jordan game later this year.
We would have had a Brevin Jordan game.
I'm just saying you could have.
Being a little bit dramatic.
Well, I mean, he had a 75-yard touchdown in the playoffs against the Browns.
Was that the Brevin Jordan game?
When the game was close. So
was that the Brevin Jordan game, though?
Well, it kind of broke the Browns back. I mean, I can remember you vividly saying it was a momentum-changing moment of the game. So
no, it was.
We're just going to ignore what Brevin Jordan was capable of doing now.
but I
You
didn't.
started the show with Brevin Jordan, and now you're telling me he sucks.
I didn't say that there was going to be a Brevin Jordan game, though.
I didn't say there was either. I just said, yeah, you can't have a Brevin Jordan game.
Also, when it comes to Texans, it is S&L, the number one duo daily podcast for the Texans. Get it on all podcast forms. We're going to be at practice today. The coordinators are going to speak, and we'll also get to talk to a few more of the players. Joe Mixon missed practice. No surprise there. Dameon Pierce missed practice. I guess that's not shocking either. Where do they go at running back? That'll be interesting. D'Amico Ryans did not dismiss Joe Mixon playing on Sunday. Dameon Pierce, we don't know. Quite frankly, I don't know that Dameon Pierce not playing is the biggest deal. Maybe this is me maybe I'm just interested. Maybe I'm just curious. I saw J.J. Taylor with the running backs yesterday. I saw British Brooks. I'm just saying Dameon Pierce was unplayable last year. Like, we can sit here and we can hear what D'Amico and them say about, like, I trust D'Amico on a lot of things, but I don't trust him on the run game at this point, because they've insisted that Dameon Pierce is really, really good. And at his best, I saw him get 3 carries the other day. So I'm not sitting here saying that, Dameon Pierce is terrible or anything like that. I'm just saying, I've based on watching him the last year or so, the possibility of seeing other guys get carries does not really scare me. As a matter of fact, it kind of intrigues me a little more than what I've seen from him.
I am worried about Dameon Pierce being the option that they go with, and that hamstring showing up and being an issue. I'd be more comfortable knowing that I'm going to go the route of Cam Akers and just figuring it out behind Cam Akers than relying on Dameon Pierce, who, as you pointed to, had some issues at the end of last year, didn't have a great preseason. Like what they talk, like Dameon was Dameon is something that D'Amico Ryans said after the first game. And I was like, yeah, that's not really what we saw in preseason. And I'm not saying the games. I'm talking about in practice each and every day. Like, I did not see what we saw in the Colts game in practice hardly ever. I mean, there was a couple of moments early in training camp, but there wasn't that consistency throughout the course of training camp. So there's that. It's a hamstring injury that could re-aggravate in a moment's notice. And so I do tend to lean more towards Cam Akers. Landry, I did find it interesting, though. D'Amico Ryans very much next man up, next man up, next man up. I don't remember him when he talked about an injury ever saying it the way kind of he said it about Joe Mixon. He's like, yeah, we really hope Joe will be back this weekend. It's like, oh, okay. Like,
he's kind of weird about injuries, though. Like, sometimes he just kind of a little bit. I mean, that's the one thing D'Amico is very protective about.
Yeah, it's he does not like talking about injuries, and typically he just puts it all in if somebody's out, like, we'll handle it. And as an example, I know we're going to talk about the centers here in a second. When I asked him about the centers and like communication from the center spot, he's like, hey, it's up to the other 10 guys to help whoever's in there. Like, it was one of those next man up philosophies. But when he was asked about Joe Mixon, he's like, yeah, we really hope Joe can play this week.
Oh, he's right, though. I mean,
yeah.
he's right. It's a scary thought to imagine this run game, period, but especially this run game without Joe Mixon. I know Joe Mixon had 150 a couple weeks ago, but we've talked about, how Indianapolis might just have problems running the ball. It is kind of scary thinking about them trying to run the rock without him, though, for sure.
I mean, Cam Akers, the fumble was bad. I mean, he had a couple of nice runs. I just don't know. Like, I don't know that you could deploy Cam Akers for 60 minutes and think that you're going to get that over the course of a game. Like, he is probably best served as a rotational piece where he is in his career now. Like, he's not a guy you could hand the ball 20, 25 times to on a Sunday afternoon and try to grind out a win against the Minnesota Vikings, who, by the way, they like we talked about how good the Bears were against the run last year. The Vikings were, I think, 9th or 10th last year against the run, and they got better on defense at a couple of different spots that's helped them stop the run even more. So it's not an easy task to try to run against this Vikings team.
Yeah, it's not. And Brian Flores seems like, I mean, he's getting, I don't think I've ever seen a defensive coordinator get this much love leading up to a matchup. It's a hell of a lot. So we'll see what that looks like. D'Amico insists that it's not an advantage to see it against your system. I disagree. I just think he doesn't want to admit that, because it can't not be, right? Like, it can't. Like if Bobby Slowick is watching, let's say he's watching this against, and it's not even like we're like connecting it and saying, oh, it's the Miami Dolphins or something like that. Like it's literally where you came from. Like it's literally your mentors. It's literally the guy that you were under for over a half decade learning how to coach. It's literally guys that you know, and you know what they bring. It's literally Brock Purdy who y'all worked with. Like you can't tell me that there's not like some sort of element. I won't even use the word advantage. There's not some sort of element that's beneficial to you to watching Brian Flores do what he did last week against San Francisco.
See, I think when you ask Bobby Slowick this today, he's going to say there's something that he can glean from it. When you asked D'Amico that yesterday, I think D'Amico thought about it defensively. Like, I think he thought about it like, oh, okay, like I don't think he thought about it from Bobby Slowick's standpoint. I do think there's something there.
Oh, so you think Bobby might say something different today if I ask him?
I don't know that he's going to say, yeah, no, it's awesome, it's amazing. Like, but I do believe there's something Slowick can take from Flores having that game against that style of defense. I think when you asked D'Amico that, he thought about, okay, well, they play an attack style defense in San Francisco. We play attack style. Their offense did that. Like, I think he thought about it defensively when I feel like you were actually asking him about it offensively. And I feel like Slowick's going to say something slightly different. He's not going to go against the grain and be opposite D'Amico, but I do think there's something Bobby Slowick can take from, they had this success against a similar offense. Now, Slowick's always quick to tell you, hey, it's the same, but it's different. Like, he's always quick to put that in there. Everybody's got their own spin, I think is what he's said a couple of times. But I do believe he'll say there's something to pick out from it.
There has to be. I mean, it just makes sense. So the running back situation, I think that's something to keep an eye on. The Dameon Pierce, I don't know how valuable Dameon Pierce is in these types of situations. Then we have the centers. And you had Scruggs and you had Jarrett Patterson. They were on the side getting work in, much like Dalton Schultz last week. I didn't want to dismiss the possibility of Dalton Schultz practicing. I want to keep an eye on these guys today and see what they're doing, because I think the thing that you probably look for is, are they following around the team? Are they following around the offense? Are they very attentive? Because yesterday they were working on the side. It didn't look like guys – I don't want to say it looked like guys that were going to be activated today, although they worked. It was kind of intense working out, but it didn't look like guys who you could just completely dismiss on a Wednesday and say, okay, those guys are out. It at the very least had signs of trending in a direction of possibly practicing on Friday and possibly getting on the field.
I will always lean towards, it's better to see them working on the side than to not see them at all. And that's where they were. And that side work, man, it's not like they were, doing a couple stretches and, lollygagging around. Like, they were deep into side work when stretches started. When we like those guys.
Patterson had the tracker on.
Yeah, they both had the tracker on.
Yeah, they both had the tracker on, which is usually a sign of, hey, they're really trying to evaluate and figure out when they can come back.
I wonder so calf injury for Patterson, groin still for Scruggs. I do wonder what is, like, Scruggs missed last week, and I wonder if it was, hey, I could go, but if I hurt this again, like, I'm done for a much longer time than one game. Like, I do wonder if that's kind of where he was from a groin injury standpoint. And maybe it's a lot easier to play him with an injury this week than it was last week. That's the guy. Like, they got to get Scruggs back. Like, I thought Patterson might be able to get close. It's not. Like, Scruggs is much better. So they got to get Scruggs back. He's the one that I'm worried about. Patterson, okay, sure.
I think that might be your first and third best center.
CJ was very complimentary of Kendrick Green yesterday. When
it's a tough SOB. I worry about him every time he steps on a football field, though, because it seems like he's been hurt for like 3 weeks.
Yeah, but look, he remember in training camp where we thought he got hurt again for the season because he slammed his helmet after, like, he got rolled up on, and he was, like, walking off the fence.
Yeah, the sense.
he's tough as nails, man. And so,
Yeah.
and
Dude, he was walking last year. Like, the reason that I didn't think his injury was serious is because when he tore whatever, what was it? It was something, whatever he did to his knee last year. He was walking after the game.
Yeah.
Just chilling, like at the shower and stuff. And I was like, hey, can I talk to Kendrick Green? Because it was like it was
the Steelers game.
The Steelers game. And they're like, nah, he's hurt. I was like, he's hurt. He's sitting there walking. He's walking.
Yeah.
And then he's out for the season the next day.
Now he's got that big Stone Cold Steve Austin knee brace, and when Austin had the bad knees and he'd come down, he's got that big Stone Cold knee brace that he's out there working with now. Look, if you've got to play Kendrick Green at center, like,
it's not ideal. It's not ideal, but
so be it. But I feel like if Shaq Mason and Kenyon Green and Titus and Laramie are going to be what they're supposed to be finally, because we haven't seen that yet through 2 weeks, then maybe you can hide the fact that you're on your third center. And look, this is an offense and a team that's used to playing with three centers. CJ said it yesterday. I had three centers last year. It's like, okay.
Yeah, well, I don't know if we want that to be a trend, my friend. I'm glad that you're open to it, but I don't know if we want that to be a trend.
It's the reality of the situation right now.
It's the reality, and there's a lot of people on the chat. Shout out to all the people on the chat. Be sure to subscribe to my channel, subscribe to Stoots, join S&L, practice reports after every practice, post-game shows, all that. We got you covered. There's a lot of people saying, well, the injury bug is biting. Trust me, it could be worse. It could be a hell of a lot worse. Let's go around the league. The Kansas City Chiefs right now, they're going to be without Hollywood Brown till January. They just lost Pacheco for damn near 3 months. Miami's doesn't know about their quarterback. The Vikings injury report looks worse. They have Justin Jefferson on there. So it's a very, very violent game. CJ said yesterday when I asked him about, dealing with this stuff, he said it's the worst part of the game, the injuries. He said if there were no injuries, then it would be a perfect game. So I wouldn't say it's anything like major. I would say that, knock on wood, it's a relatively healthy football team.
So look, I think of all the people that are injured that didn't practice yesterday between the two teams, Joe Mixon is the most important one. So if Texas don't have Mixon, like
Jefferson practiced.
Yeah, Jefferson practiced. He was and then Nico didn't practice. I know we haven't talked about that. He's fine. He was walking through like some wide receiver stuff. He's fine. I'm not worried about Nico Collins for Sunday. But of all the people that didn't practice yesterday, like, to me, Mixon's the most important. The next three guys are Vikings players that didn't practice. It's their rookie edge rusher, Dallas Turner. It's their right tackle, Brian O'Neill, who's been really good. And think about missing a tackle, and Daniil Hunter and Will Anderson are coming to town. Like, that'd be scary as hell if I was Sam Darnold. And then it's Jordan Addison. Now, I know they had the other guy they call Speedy that had a good game. Whatever. He ain't Jordan Addison. So, like, I think it's Mixon. Then it's three Vikings players as far as importance of guys that didn't practice yesterday.
Yeah, Jordan Addison will be interesting. I'm surprised he didn't go to Georgia. I thought for sure like he would be a Georgia Bulldog for sure. Landry Locker, Cody Stoots here on S&L. Let's play a game. Cody Stoots has a game. The Texans early blame game. It's early, but we got to assign blame because that's what media types do every once in a while, as well as fans. So take it away, Cody.
It's pretty simple. The blame game. I give you something that's not going well for the Texans. You tell me who's to blame. All right, the rushing attack not looking good against Chicago. Was that blaming the Houston Texans, or you blame the Chicago Bears playing good defense?
I would say that I'm going to sit on the fence here and say it's a mix of both. But if I had to blame, I would say Joe Mixon getting hurt did not help the cause. I do wonder how they would have been able to run the rock had Joe Mixon never left. So I guess I'm going to blame Nick Caserio and D'Amico for not really addressing the backup running back position like I felt that they should have. So plenty of blame to go around. I would say Mixon's injury combined with not really addressing the backup running back position proactively.
I would have told you I was going to blame the Bears because, hey, look, the Texans ran the ball well the week before, and then the Colts got gashed by the Packers, and I couldn't say that was the Texans doing in the first week 100%. Okay, the secondary has a bunch of 100% snappage guys. So Jimmy Ward's played all the snaps. Jalen Petre's played all the snaps. Stingley, Lassiter. Who do you blame for those guys playing 100% of the snaps? You blame D'Amico Ryans or you blame Nick Caserio for that?
I'll blame D'Amico Ryans, but it's not bad blame.
Right.
You could put this blame in credit. You could call it credit too. You could call it blame/credit. I think D'Amico Ryans has done a really good job of reassigning a role to Jalen Petre that more effectively fits his skill set as a football player. And I also wonder, we don't know if the fact that Christian Harris is out and you have two linebackers that you really trust to play significant snaps kind of sprinkles into the willingness to play Jalen Petre for 100% of the snaps. So I'll blame D'Amico Ryans, but it's not bad blame. It's just as much credit as it is blame.
I think you're right on this. And I think you blame D'Amico Ryans because that's how I think he wants to operate. Like, I don't think he's operating that way necessarily out of necessity. I think he loves to operate with the guys that he trusts being on the field a ton. Okay, blame game. Tank Dell's disappointing start. Are we blaming Tank Dell or are we blaming Bobby Slowick?
I'm going to blame Tank Dell because if he catches that one ball, then we're looking at things a lot different. Like his target share right now, he has one less target than Stephon Diggs. And sometimes it just be like that. I mean, you have one guy in Nico Collins who's leading the league in receiving yards. So you can't really complain. Like, I know it's easy to point to Bobby Slowick and say, you got to do this. And I don't like Tank Dell being a gadget guy, but he has 11 targets. Stephon Diggs has 12. Nico has 18, and Nico leads the league in receiving. So that's just kind of how it's going to be sometimes. But when you're Tank Dell and you don't take advantage of the opportunities you get, you got to blame Tank Dell for that, not Bobby. I'm not blaming Bobby. I know it does seem like there's like a small portion of people kind of waiting to pounce on old Bobby Slowick, but I'm gonna blame Tank and say that Tank's got to take advantage of his opportunities.
Yeah, there's definitely some people waiting to catch Bobby slipping or try to blame him for some stuff. I would go ahead and agree with you. We went through the numbers with Tank yesterday that basically if he catches a 50-yard touchdown, which is the one that he dropped in the game on Sunday night, then all the stats are pretty equal amongst the wide receivers. So I will blame Tank Dell. But if your difference between your season being disappointing, not disappointing is one play, it feels like you're still on the right track there. And he has had some nice rushing moments as well. Okay, last one here in the blame game. Disjointed offense. And I'll just let you pick your poison on this one. It's the early part of the season, so you can put that caveat there as you want, but I just feel like it should have clicked a little bit more for longer stretches than it has to this point.
The disjointed offense, I'm
gonna go two times. I'm gonna two blame here. I'm gonna blame a little bit of rust. It's the early part of the season. Oh. Everybody has disjointed offenses.
There we go.
And then I'm gonna blame a little bit of the offensive line. So if I was, mixing those two together, that's what I'm gonna blame.
Yeah, I think the offensive line's always easy to blame. Hasn't been as consistent as a cohesive unit as you would like. So I'll blame the offensive line because I actually think there have been instances where their performance might have deserved a worse fate, and CJ Stroud kind of bailed them out by being CJ Stroud. So I'll blame the offensive line.
I feel like your what standard do I hold you to story that I really like that you tell sometimes. I feel like that applies to this offensive line. Like, this is the O-line they wanted to have a year ago. As soon as Scruggs is back in, that's who their projected starters were a year ago. And hey, Laramie Tunsil, he's supposed to be the best left tackle in football. Well, if that's the standard I'm going to hold him to, like, okay, there's more. And Titus Howard's the 5th most expensive right tackle in football. If that's the standard I'm holding to, like, you need to see more. Shaq Mason, Kenyon Green, like, I think the standard that we should have for this offensive line is high. So we are critical of them when it's not excellent because there is a excellent standard that we have for them.
Yeah, there is. And I don't know almost if I need to tweak that and not expect this offensive line to look like one of the best offensive lines. I think that might be something I need to evaluate myself. What standard am I holding them to? And am I just am I just pocket watching and blaming them for what they're being paid to be?
I do worry that we're going to get to a point with this offensive line. And have you ever heard this? Is when a coach stops yelling at you, it's when he stops caring. And you're just like, okay, you're just there. I heard that a lot in Little League. It's like, yeah, when I stop yelling, I'm just going to stop caring. And then the coaches stopped yelling at me. I was like, oh, man, it's not good. But I do wonder if we get there with this offensive line where, hey, this is the offensive line. We had to adjust our expectations because we never got to those lofty levels. Like that would be a worrisome part of the season. We're not there yet. I don't think we're even close to that point yet. But I do wonder if maybe one day we will have to adjust those weekly expectations for this O-line.
Yeah, maybe we just look at the O-line and say, can they be good? Not can they be great?
Yeah.
I think that's very, very possible, and I think we could get to that point. So we have some movement on the line, the betting line with the Texans and Vikes, and it's gone in a different direction than perhaps many anticipated. So it opened at minus. First, it was -3 before the week. Then it went down to -1. It's gone up to -2. So the Texans are now a 2-point favorite against the Minnesota Vikings, which means maybe people are pouncing on the Texans a little bit. If you want to get in on this, I don't know that it goes up to 3, but we do have the movement now where it's at 2. And BetUS has the 150% bonus with code U250 if you want to partake in that type of activity, which I strongly recommend. Very fun.
The movement on this line has been interesting. I mean, the biggest mover would be if we found out Jefferson wasn't going. Like that could be another point, but it seems like he's going to go. So he's
a tough dude, man.
It feels like it's going to settle at right about here. I don't know that it's the correct line, but
yeah, I just don't, I think that there's actually encouragement with the way the Texans have won the last 2 weeks. And that's just kind of like, if I'm trying to make something of these two ball clubs, like 2 weeks in, and let's just pretend that I'm trying to make some sense of it, which can kind of be dangerous, especially in the NFL. Hell, the Texans were 0-2 last year. So, trying to make too much sense of the first 2 weeks can be kind of dangerous. But we saw the Minnesota Vikings beat San Francisco. I think that means the Texans aren't going to sleep on the Vikings. And we've seen the Texans find the ability to win ugly, which I think might be what they're going to have to do here. I mean, hell, we just played the blame game for a 2-0 team, which is awesome. Like that tells you like where the standard is. So I think just based on like those two things, if you're telling me, can the Texans gut this out? That's where I'm just kind of like, yeah, because we saw this, we saw this, and we talked about this the other day. Like Sam Darnold is 2-0. Like, is this gonna, like, how far does this go? How far do stories like this go where Sam Darnold's playing well and stuff? Like, what are we talking about? An 11-win Minnesota Vikings team? I don't think so. I think we're talking about one of those teams that's kind of in the hunt. So I just don't see them starting out 3-0. Maybe I'm making too much of early trends, and maybe that's kind of a weird thing to look at. But I just think when you see how the Texans have won, the fact that they might have to win ugly with the stuff that they don't have, the fact that Sam Darnold, and CJ Stroud, I feel like this is a game that they should be able to gut out.
I mean, look, it's Sam Darnold. And the only reason it's Sam Darnold. Like the only reason there's any sort of juice to the Vikings right now, like if they had played somebody that's not San Francisco and they had won, I don't know that anybody's like feeling like, all these good vibes around the Vikings. They beat one of the NFC contenders for the Super Bowl. Like, okay, that's good. You know who they beat the week 1? The Giants. They're awful. The Giants stink. Like you should have pounded the Giants, even on the road. And in that game, you know what Sam Darnold did in that game? 208 for 2 touchdowns. Now, they didn't need to throw the ball a bunch, but it's not like they blew the Giants out at halftime and there was no chance it was going to be a game. Like, I mean, I'm not super impressed with this guy. Like, and again, Will Anderson and Danielle Hunter, like, and I went through this yesterday, Landry. I'm not going to sit here and tell you San Francisco's not good. They're freaking awesome. They're built slightly different from a defensive perspective than the way the Texans are built. They have one super elite player on the defensive line, and then they have one super elite player at linebacker. Like Fred Warner is one of the best players in football. He plays linebacker. Bosa is one of the best edge rushers. The Texans have 2 edge rushers. I don't know how Minnesota's accounting for both of those guys. Like, I feel like Kevin O'Connell could scheme it up to take one guy out, but Warner was killing them all game. Now can he scheme to take 2 guys out? I don't believe it. Darnold's a sitting duck back there. As the chat said, as we've said all week, he'll be seeing ghosts.
All right, that's today's edition of S&L Practice. Today, 11:45, we'll hear from the coordinators. We'll hear from some players. We got you covered when it comes to that. Thanks to everyone for coming through. Again, we're going Monday through Friday. Tomorrow's show, special time. We always go 9 a.m. from Tuesday to Thursday. Tomorrow, we're going to wait for the final injury report because that gives us a much more clear picture of what it's going to look like, and then Reaction Monday at 8 a.m. For Cody Stoots, I'm Landry Locker. Subscribe to our channels right along. We got you covered when it comes to this Texans stuff, whether you're a Texans fan or not. Thanks for coming through. Always remember, we're in this together. Stoots, hit him with the trademark.
Eat good, sleep good, be good. We'll talk Texans again soon.